Ever bought sparkling wine for a celebration and felt quietly betrayed after the first sip? In America, bubbles aren't just drinks, they're props. Brunches, weddings, promotions, we made it moments. But price tags and gold foil don't equal pleasure. Today, we're ranking the worst American sparkling wines from the bottom up. Not by marketing, not by nostalgia, by one ruthless question. Would you actually want a second glass? We're separating hype from flavour, branding from substance, and celebration from carbonation. Let's start where the fizz is loud and the payoff is small. Number 8. Andre Brut. Andre Brut isn't trying to impress you, it's trying to be available. This is the bottle that shows up because it was within arm's reach, not because anyone craved it. In the glass, the sweetness hits first, broad and uncomplicated, followed by bubbles that rush in dramatically and vanish almost instantly. There's fruit, technically, but it feels blurred, like someone described apples from memory rather than from taste. The appeal is obvious. It's inexpensive, easy to pour, and disappears nicely into orange juice. For mimosas, it performs its duty without complaint. That's the strength. It fills flutes. It keeps brunch moving. It doesn't ask questions. The weakness is just as obvious. Drink it on its own, and the structure collapses fast. The finish fades before you've formed an opinion, leaving behind a sugary echo that feels more soda than sparkling wine. This isn't built for sipping slowly, it's built for quantity. If celebration had a placeholder, this would be it. Quick favour before we keep going. We're almost at 1,000 subscribers. If you're enjoying these honest, no BS wine breakdowns and want more of them, hit subscribe. It really helps more than you think. Alright, back to the bottles. Number 7. Cook's Brut. Cook's Brut carries itself like it belongs at every party. The word brut suggests dryness, restraint, something crisp and intentional. In reality, what you get feels engineered for universal approval rather than genuine enjoyment. The first sip is bright and approachable, but the character never deepens. It stays on the surface, polite and forgettable. There's a calculated neutrality to it, as if every edge was sanded down in advance so nothing could stand out too much. To its credit, it doesn't offend. Serve it ice cold at a crowded gathering and nobody will complain. That's the advantage. It's socially safe. It performs well in loud rooms where conversation matters more than what's in the glass. It understands its environment. It knows its background support, not the main act, and it rarely tries to step forward. But once you slow down and pay attention, the experience flattens. The fruit feels simplified, the bubbles energetic but fleeting, and the finish cuts off abruptly. It's sparkling wine designed to avoid criticism, not earn admiration. There's no arc, no build, no lingering note that makes you pause. You're not paying for complexity here, you're paying for reassurance. It wins rooms, not hearts. And when a bottle exists purely to blend into the background, the second glass feels more automatic than desired. That's not celebration, that's habit. Number 6. J. Roget Brut. J. Roget has become the unofficial default for bring something bubbly. It's affordable, recognizable, and always stacked high in grocery store displays. That visibility is its greatest strength. It's accessible in the most literal sense. You don't hunt for it. It waits for you, positioned at eye level with a price that removes hesitation. Pour it and the bubbles arrive with enthusiasm. The opening impression suggests crispness and energy. But linger for a moment and the illusion thins out. The fruit profile feels faint and linear, like it's moving in a straight line with no detours into depth or texture. There's brightness, but it feels one-dimensional, as though the wine stops developing the second it touches your palate. It's not flawed, it's just hollow. The mid-palate doesn't evolve, and the finish disappears so quickly you're left checking whether you imagined it. In casual settings, that may not matter. At a backyard cookout, it does the job. It fills glasses, fuels toasts, and keeps the evening light. But this ranking isn't about whether it functions, it's about whether it excites. This is sparkling wine that checks a box and moves on. It's technically bubbly, that's the nicest way to put it. The second glass doesn't invite you in, it just refills space. Number 5. Ballatore Gran Spumante. Ballatore Gran Spumante doesn't pretend to be subtle. It leans fully into sweetness and makes no apologies for it. The first sip is lush and sugary, almost dessert-like, with a flavour profile that feels closer to candied fruit than crisp orchard notes. It's vibrant in a way that immediately announces itself, coating the palate with a syrupy confidence that leaves no room for ambiguity. There's a certain honesty in that. If you want something soft, sweet, and easy, this delivers exactly that. It's approachable, friendly, and unapologetically indulgent. For newcomers who dislike dryness, it feels comforting rather than intimidating. There's no sharp edge to decode, no austere finish to analyze. But sweetness without structure quickly becomes overwhelming. The sugar coats everything, flattening nuance and muting complexity. The bubbles work hard to lift the weight, yet the finish settles heavily instead of refreshing the palate. Instead of cleansing, it clings. This is sparkling wine that aims for pleasure and overshoots into excess. It tastes fun for a few sips. After that, it starts tasting loud. Celebration should feel elevated. This feels amplified. And amplification without balance rarely earns a second pour. Number 4. Barefoot Bubbly Brut Cuvée. Barefoot Bubbly Brut Cuvée is the master of approachability. It doesn't intimidate, it doesn't challenge. It greets you with a friendly label, an easy price point, and a promise of uncomplicated celebration. In America, that combination is powerful. This is the bottle that shows up to casual birthdays, office potlucks, and impromptu Friday nights when nobody wants to overthink the choice. The first sip feels clean and simple. Light orchard fruit, a mild crispness, bubbles that sparkle without aggression. It's easy to drink, and that's the appeal. You don't need to decode it, you don't need to slow down and analyze. It slides in politely and keeps the mood relaxed. That accessibility is its strength. It welcomes beginners and never overwhelms. But comfort has a ceiling. The flavor doesn't expand, it doesn't deepen, it doesn't surprise you halfway through the glass. The experience stays in the shallow end, pleasant but limited. When the moment calls for something with personality, this fades into the wallpaper. It doesn't clash with food, but it doesn't elevate it either. Barefoot understands branding better than structure. It sells vibe. It sells familiarity. It sells the idea that sparkling wine should feel carefree. What it doesn't consistently deliver is distinction. This is the sparkling wine equivalent of background music. You're fine with it playing, you just wouldn't choose it as the soundtrack to a memory. The first glass is agreeable. The second feels automatic. And automatic isn't what celebration should taste like. Number 3. Wycliffe Brut. Wycliffe Brut sits in that interesting middle ground where the label tries to look serious while the liquid inside keeps things basic. It presents itself with clean fonts and confident wording, hinting at something crisp and refined. On the shelf, it suggests value without looking bargain bin. That's not accidental. It's positioned to feel like a smart purchase. Pour it and the bubbles rise quickly, energetic and bright. The opening impression delivers a flash of freshness. There's a crisp edge that hints at citrus, maybe a faint green apple note, and a dry finish that wants to signal sophistication. For a moment, it almost convinces you. Then the mid-palate settles in and the momentum stalls. The fruit lacks depth. The texture feels thin. The finish wraps up abruptly, leaving more memory of fizz than flavour. It's competent, but competence isn't the same as character. There's nothing technically wrong, it just never climbs above fine. And that's the quiet problem. Fine is what you say when you don't want to criticise. Fine is what you settle for when you don't expect much. Wycliffe trades on that expectation. It doesn't promise greatness, it promises acceptability. In large gatherings, it works. It won't embarrass you. It won't shock anyone either. But when you slow down and compare it to bottles that show real structure and persistence, the gap becomes obvious. This is sparkling wine that looks like it tried harder than it actually did. You finish a glass, not because you're impressed, but because it's there. Number 2. Korbel California Champagne. Korbel is practically a national tradition. For millions of Americans, this is what champagne means. It's poured at weddings without debate. It's stacked high during the holidays. It carries decades of habit on its shoulders, and habit is powerful. When a bottle becomes ritual, people stop questioning it. In the glass, Korbel presents itself with confidence. The bubbles are lively, the acidity forward, the fruit profile bright. There's a sharp green apple note that jumps quickly, followed by a citrus snap that keeps things moving. At first, it feels energetic, structured, intentional. That's the strength. It tastes like it's trying to be serious. But that brightness can tip into thinness. The fruit rarely deepens into richness, and the finish often drops away faster than you expect. The structure feels more rigid than layered. It hits you up front, then exits without leaving much behind. What remains is acidity and memory of fizz rather than a lingering impression of craft. Korbel survives on familiarity. It benefits from generations who grew up seeing that label at milestone moments. And once something becomes symbolic, it's difficult to untangle taste from nostalgia. But symbolism isn't flavor. This is sparkling wine that promises tradition and delivers consistency. Consistency has value. It's dependable. It won't derail a celebration. Yet, when you compare it to bottles that offer dimension and texture, the difference becomes undeniable. Korbel feels important because it has history. It rarely feels exceptional because of what's in the glass. You respect it, you pour it, but you rarely think about it the next day. Number 1. Great Western American Brut. Great Western carries history like a badge. One of the earliest American sparkling wine houses, rooted in the Finger Lakes, it represents an era when domestic producers were determined to prove they could compete. That legacy matters. It deserves recognition. There's something admirable about a bottle that helped shape American sparkling wine identity. Pour it, and the profile leans traditional. There's crisp orchard fruit, a touch of yeast character, and a dryness that aims for seriousness. It feels less sugary than the lower-ranked bottles, more restrained, more intentional. That's the strength. It signals ambition. It wants to be taken seriously. But ambition alone doesn't guarantee excitement. The structure can feel dated rather than refined. The fruit expression stays narrow, and the texture doesn't quite achieve the finesse you'd expect from something trading on heritage. It feels like a snapshot from another time, preserved rather than evolved. You can sense the effort. You can respect the role it played. Yet, when placed against modern sparkling wines that push for clarity, balance, and persistence, this bottle feels stuck between eras. Not flawed, not careless, just not elevated enough to stand above the rest. The story behind it is compelling. The experience inside the glass is less so. Great Western tastes like history. It doesn't always taste like progress. And when the second glass doesn't call you back, reverence can't carry it any higher. We've worked through the fizz that flatters the room. Now let's talk about the two bottles that earn the glass. Number 2. Roederer Estate Brut. Roederer Estate Brut is where the conversation changes tone. This isn't a bottle trying to win a loud room. It doesn't rely on flashy branding or a bargain price to move cases. Instead, it leans on something rarer in the American sparkling aisle: restraint and structure that actually hold up under scrutiny. The first sip tells you this was built with intention. The bubbles are fine, not frantic. The fruit shows clarity: crisp apple, subtle citrus, a hint of toast that feels integrated rather than pasted on. Nothing screams for attention. Everything moves in sync. That's the strength. Balance. Real, measurable balance that feels deliberate from start to finish. What separates this from the bottles lower on the list is persistence. The flavors don't vanish after the initial impression. The texture stays present. The finish lingers just long enough to make you pause before the next sip. It invites pacing. It rewards attention. That's rare at this price point. Now, it doesn't dominate a table visually. It's not a flex bottle. Nobody is ordering it to impress strangers. And that might be its only weakness in the American market. It's respected more than it's flaunted. In a culture that often confuses price with prestige, subtle excellence can get overlooked. But this is sparkling wine that tastes like it belongs in its bracket, maybe even above it. It doesn't chase status. It delivers value without apology. This tastes expensive. It doesn't feel inflated. And when you reach for the second glass, it's because you want more, not because the flute is empty. Number 1. Schramsberg Blanc de Blanc. Schramsberg Blanc de Blanc is what happens when American sparkling wine stops trying to imitate and starts defining itself. This isn't a casual bottle. It carries history, yes, but it wears that history lightly. From the first pour, there's refinement in the glass. The bubbles move with discipline. The aroma unfolds in layers. Lemon zest, green apple, subtle brioche, a mineral edge that feels deliberate. The palate builds instead of bursting. There's freshness, but it's integrated. Acidity keeps everything vibrant without overpowering the fruit. The texture feels polished, almost architectural in how each element supports the next. Nothing sticks out awkwardly. Nothing collapses early. The finish stretches confidently, evolving rather than fading. That's the strength. It feels intentional from start to end. This is sparkling wine made for sipping, not masking. It invites attention and rewards it. The only real weakness is price relative to the mass market bottles below it. It costs more than the grocery store staples. But here's the difference. The experience matches the spend. You're not paying for a logo. You're paying for depth, control, and persistence. Schramsberg doesn't rely on hype to justify itself. It delivers substance. It tastes like someone cared about every stage of the process. It tastes like celebration with structure. This isn't bubbly for the sake of bubbles. It's sparkling wine with identity. And when the glass empties, you notice. Not because it vanished, but because you didn't want it to. That's the countdown from forgettable fizz to bottles that actually respect your glass. Some sell nostalgia. Some sell price. A few finally sell pleasure. Which one did we underrate? And which one do you swear by? Tell me below. And if this helped you spend smarter, stick around. We're just getting started.